We're on the final part of the Castle Grayskull restoration, and we have a lot of work to do.
You can pit He-Man against Beastman playing for the power of Castle Grayskull. You have to put the castle together.
The first priority is to get the second floor, the elevator floor, into the castle. We had a very generous donation from Yojo Outlet Center. The Cooper brothers sent us this floor. I believe it's one of the earlier Castle Grayskull floors. There were slight variations. As you can see, this one has a notch that's clear, whereas this one has a notch that has a sort of a fill area in it. This one was rather warped. Chris had warned me about this before he sent it. I put it under the books after I had heated it up. So I applied heat through boiling water. I dunked this thing in boiling water and tried to flatten it. Then I put it under the books, and then I put those books underneath these heavy weights that are part of my hydraulic press, and I left it there for 6 weeks. And then when I popped everything back up, this thing was just as warped as the day I put it under there. It had not changed. So because the price points on these floors are very inexpensive, I decided it wasn't worth the time to try and figure out how to get this to flatten out. So I went back online and I got another one, and it looks pretty good, and the seller said it was nice and flat, and it is. So let's install this one. Okay, this is the elevator floor, which means we have to figure out, because I've never built Castle Grayskull before, we have to figure out what takes priority. I have an elevator here. This elevator still has the hard to find gargoyle puller, which pulls the elevator up and down. However, it also has what appears to be a replacement string, and that was a problem. I didn't want the string to be sort of like a cotton cord, because over time this will eventually, fray, wear down, and snap. So I wanted to go back to the original. The original cord I had a fragment of. It is a nylon cord, and it has a slightly green tinge to it. I tried to match this as best I could, but the first challenge I had was figuring out what kind of cord this is. And I figured it was something close to what you use in blinds, like window blinds. I went online, looked around, discovered that the blinds have what's called lift cord, nylon lift cord. Then I did a search and I had to determine what size it was. And the closest size that I found for the Castle Grayskull cord is 1.2 millimeter. So I ordered 1.2 millimeter in what I thought was a lighter green. But I think the flash photography was a little, I think the flash photography affected the photo online a little bit, and what I got was a dark forest green. But that's okay, it's a repro piece, it matches the color of the castle a lot better, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to go with it. But first, I got to determine how this best goes together. I guess the way you do this is you put all these pieces together and then you slot it in this way. So the first thing I need to do is replace the string on the elevator, because I don't want to have to deal with that later. So let me figure out how long this original cord is. Fortunately, I have my brother's Castle Grayskull, which still has the original string intact. So I'm going to measure that and then determine how much I need from this string. This is my brother's original Castle Grayskull all the way back from 1982-83. And this is the original cord in it. It's never broken. I know for a fact that it's always been in this orientation. So I'm fortunate that I have a great reference to figure out how to assemble or restore the one in our Castle Grayskull. Interestingly, this cord is sort of I guess it's a blue or a mossy green. It's a little closer than the sample that I just showed to the cord that we source, although mine is a little too dark. But maybe over time this cord will kind of lose some of its color and it'll age to the correct color, I'm hoping. Also notice that the gargoyle is around the back of the elevator, so that when you pull straight up and then you let it go back down. The gargoyle is not in front of this post, and that, from what I recall, is the factory original way it came into our household. I can't remember if it was assembled out of the box for this toy. I can't remember if it was already pre-assembled or if there was some assembly that was required after you bought it. But this is the way that it's always been in my experience. So I'm going to mimic that in this one. But the first thing we have to do is get rid of this cord and then use about 12 to 12.5 inches of the lift cord that I purchased. It's about 12 to 12.5 inches worth of cord that you're going to need. So let's get started getting this cut off and redone. I want to be real careful not to damage the plastic of these toys as I get close to these knots. Okay. Alright, so there's our gargoyle piece. And here's our elevator. Notice how there is a loop that's about an inch long before it knots, so that it can perfectly stop when it gets to the level of the elevator floor. We're going to try and emulate that. Alright, so the way we're going to start this knot is with a little trick that Melinda devised where we've measured the width of this loop with this piece of cardstock, this little piece of paper. And so when I thread through and bring up, I'm going to put this little piece of paper right here, and it helps me determine where that knot needs to set. Of course, it's going to be a little difficult to keep it there, but we'll do our best. Alright, so here's our elevator, here's our floor. I'm going to slip this through, and then the first thing we need to do is attach the floor to the castle, and that's going to be achieved similarly to the throne room. We're just going to clip one side and then gently squeeze the castle and snap it in place. There we go. Alright, now our elevator has two pegs. You can see them right here. And they go into these two holes, one on the bottom, one on the top. And they're just press fit in. Alright. Alright, now we have our gargoyle. So we're going to want our gargoyle to start right here when the elevator's at the bottom. So I'm going to thread this through. Alright, just cut off the excess, leave ourselves a little bit of room. That's done. Alright, there are two more stickers that have to go on Castle Grayskull. We have the dungeon and we have this banner or, this kind of knightly pennant. The first thing we're going to do is do the dungeon. The easiest way to do this, in my opinion, is to just remove the throne room floor, which may or may not be easy depending on how agreeable it wants to be. There we go. Now that the dungeon floor is removed, you want the drawbridge down because this pin is going to be in your way. So the drawbridge goes down, and then you have your sticker. Your sticker has an inset in the top to allow for the edge of the drawbridge. So you want it in there about like that. This is a reproduction sticker that we made on our inkjet printer, just like you've seen us do in many of the other restorations that we've worked on. Don't get impatient with these. Always make sure everything's lying down perfectly before you lay everything flat. Looks pretty good. Put our throne room back on, but before we do that, actually, second thought, let's do this pennant first. This pennant, when it came originally with the Castle Grayskull, had a complete, adhesive surface on the other side, but it was never clear where it was supposed to go. When I restored my brother's Castle Grayskull, I decided, since I had to replace this sticker anyway, since his was missing, I was going to figure it out. A lot of times, you'll see people do weird things with it on eBay, where they'll have it stuck to a floor, like right here, or they'll have it kind of, stuck to a side, and it just looks bad because there's no even surface for it to adhere to. Since it's supposed to be in the throne room, to the best of my knowledge, and since a lot of kings and a lot of medieval movies have their pennants behind their throne, what I did with my brothers, and what I'm going to do with this one, is I'm not going to peel off all of this backing. I'm only going to peel off a little bit at the top and then cut off the backer. So let me show you what I mean. Alright, so I've got a little piece of it here. I'm backing it off just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch. Doesn't have to be much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim that little bit of the backing off. Not cutting the sticker, I'm just cutting the backing. Alright, so that leaves you with just a tiny little bit at the top. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay this back down, and then if we take this piece right here, see this little area right here on the back of, or on the bottom of this platform? I'm just going to take this piece and adhere it right there. So now it's a free hanging pennant in the middle of Castle Grayskull behind the throne. But it's not sticky on the back, so it's not going to get all messed up. Now it hangs nicely. Now we can put the throne back in. Alright, now we're on to the fun parts. We're on to the easy parts. First, we're going to deal with these cardboard pieces. One of the most often lost pieces of Castle Grayskull are the cardboard inserts. In fact, some people lost them so quickly they didn't even remember them being part of the play experience. I certainly didn't for quite a long time. You have an astronaut, or a suit of armor, you have this computer console, and then you have this weapons rack. The first thing that I always do is I put the astronaut in because he fills out the throne room. There's a series of slots sort of sticking out of the floor of the throne room, and the astronaut, let me get that out of the way. The astronaut simply threads through them like this. And that's where he lives. Second one is the computer console, which has a hole punched through it because it goes on this post here on the elevator floor. So you simply position it properly and then let it hang from the post. Not much to that. The weapons rack, you actually have to fold this so that it will sit like this. And as you can tell, it doesn't really want to do it, and I'm not going to force it because it's paper. So I'm glad I have it. I'm going to keep it with the castle, but I'm just going to lay it over here by the drawbridge. Alright, now let's do the weapons. You have sort of a weapons training piece, which is self-explanatory. That's already complete, ready to go, so I'm going to set that up here out of my way. Then you have the weapons rack. The weapons rack contained a number of weapons, and I have a pile of them to choose from because I had to scour the internet trying to find all the ones that I needed. In my original Castle Grayskull restoration, I talked about how this tiny little pistol was the hardest to find, and fortunately my brothers still had all of the weapons intact. I had to go searching for this pistol, but I found it for about $25. So I have the pistol, that's one piece. I have the mace, we have the hand axe, we have the shield, there is a laser rifle, and I have some duplicates. So let's see, we have a sword. This was one of the harder pieces to find, actually. And then we have a large sort of halberd, which I'm picking out the nicest one of the ones I have. We have a spear, and we have a poleaxe. And then finally, we have the ladder. And the ladder can just go anywhere you want. That's a complete Castle Grayskull, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, Castle Grayskull is a classic playset, and it was really fun to put this one back together for my personal collection since I didn't have one of my own. There are a few parts that are hard to track down, and there's some other parts that can be finicky and be high maintenance if they're broken or need, replacement or repair. So be prepared to be patient, and if you don't have some of those harder to find parts, be prepared to spend a few bucks or replicate some stickers. Well, that's going to be it for this restoration, but we've got some good ones coming up. Thank you for watching this, and we will see you on the next one.